Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So today's presentation is going to be going over Unity Reflect and how it integrates with different authoring tools and with also BIM 360 for real-time walkthroughs and visualizations. Now, for the duration of the webinar, everyone's going to be on mute. However, I'm going to have a Q&A at the end. I'm also going to be keeping an eye on both the chat and the questions window. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in there at any point in time. If I can answer it in the course of what I'm talking about or presenting, I'll answer it right then and there. If not, I'll make sure I cover it at the end. That's a little bit about Microdesk. We're an AECO technology consulting firm. Basically, we've been around since '94. We have 13 locations across the US and the UK, and our team is almost 300 people now. And that is people who have backgrounds in construction, engineering, architecture, design. So we've actually worked in the field and understand the trade. It's not just for specialists with tools or software. Now, our focus these days is helping out with globalization, urbanization, sustainability. A lot of the major questions and issues that are coming up these days, handling how we, handling how we consume energy, how we actually make buildings more efficient, and how we handle urbanization with more and more people moving into urban centers. Now, what we do to help with this is we work with our clients and consultants on design, construction, and all the way into operations. And our services that help with this, we work with project coordination. We actually do visualization services, a little bit about what we're actually going to be touching on today. We also do scripting, application development with our own internal development team. And we can actually create technology assessments and create content for our clients as well. Now, we also work with a lot of our partners. Today, we're going to be focusing on Unity. And doing the presentation today is going to be myself. My name is Peter Marchese. I'm the Senior Technology Evangelist at Microdesk. I've been with Microdesk coming on 16 years now, and I worked as an architect for 10 years before that. So my focus these days is on emerging technologies, AR, VR, UAVs, a lot of the cloud services. Basically, I get to see what's going on, figure out how it works, make sure it works the way people expect it, and then figure out what else we can do with it beyond its initial options. Now, what we're going to be covering today is Unity Reflect. We're going to go over what it does, what it works with, the different kinds of integrations, a little bit of focus on the BIM 360 integration, how to use it, and then some Q&A and then some examples of how people work with it. Now, before I get rolling, though, I always like to ask just a couple of quick questions. So, launch this one. So, I always like to know who I'm talking to. When I'm presenting to CAD managers, people that are focusing on, in this case, visualization, project managers or principal level, just helps me direct my examples. Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody, for your contribution on that. Appreciate it. So next one here. Are you currently using any real-time rendering tools? So this could be Unity, it could be Twinmotion, Lumion, Enscape. Wow, overwhelming majority is yes. Interesting. So if you haven't used Reflect before, hopefully this helps give you an example of how it works. You can compare it to the tools that you're already working with. And then the last one before we get rolling. Are you already using Unity? And this could be Reflect or it could be the Pro version. Okay, so most people are no, so that's good. A lot of this information will be brand new to you. The few that are yes, hopefully I'll offer something new that you didn't know already. Alrighty, so let's get rolling then. So first thing is, well, what is Unity Reflect? So main thing here to think about is that if you've heard of Unity before, you likely think of it as a game engine, which is exactly what Unity and Unity Pro is. And that tends to be, I won't say a turnoff, but people see that and they think it's too complex or it's too hard to use. And that's exactly what Unity Reflect is meant to combat or to help with. So the idea of this is that if you're working in something like Revit, I don't actually have to leave Revit and do any crazy work to actually send my designs into Unity Reflect. It's a seamless button press. Do this, send it to Unity, and then either myself or other people can actually view it and consume it and understand the project. Now, one of the really cool things I'm going to be showing here is that live link and the ability to get the metadata from your models. So again, we spent so much time making models that are more than just pretty. We want to make sure that they're intelligent. So the goal here is to make sure that as I send my models into a visualization tool, I can still click on elements and understand what they are. I can get the data out of them. Multi-users, this isn't just locked into me on my computer. I can send this to anyone, anywhere. And I have full control over who actually can and can't see it too. And I'll mention a couple of things near the end about Unity Pro, but that allows me to expand beyond what Unity Reflect does on its own. For anybody who ever used the old Autodesk Stingray or Max Interactive, and then the Revit Live, think of it a little bit like that, where if you wanted to take the live workflow and go crazy with it, you had Stingray to work with it. Similar, but much more powerful is this. If I want to take my Unity Reflect workflow or end result and expand upon that, customize it, I've got Unity Pro that can do that. And then with this, I can use this on multiple platforms. And right now for this webinar, I'm going to be focusing on the iOS one, but the interface and the workflow is going to be consistent regardless of whether I'm looking at iOS, Android, AR, VR, or even on my PC desktop. Now, in terms of the actual workflow, first thing that we typically look at is, okay, well, what are our authoring tools? What are we able to connect to? Right now, those authoring tools are Revit, Navisworks, SketchUp, and Rhino. The benefit here is that if you are working with these tools, you're great. It's a one-button press from inside of the tool to send them. And the great thing here is Navisworks, that actually is able to consume many different file formats. So if you're not working in one of those four, as long as I can put my model in the Navis, I can still send it to Unity very quickly. Now, these are all desktop apps. Granted, they have different cloud capabilities, but if I want to do something that's more in the cloud or a little bit different, this also works with BIM 360 and also the unified platform from Autodesk. So if you're using the new Autodesk docs or BIM 360 docs, I have the ability to take my content that's in there and send it right into the Reflect server as well. So I can take my content from any of these different applications, bring it into the Reflect server. And then the great thing from that is, well, I get to consume that in just about anything that I want. Am I using a Windows PC, Mac? Am I looking at a mobile device like a tablet? Am I trying to send this to a AR or VR headset? And this isn't a one-shot deal. Once I've sent the content into there and I've made a connection, I have the ability to consistently update or refresh the content that I'm looking at and working with. So this isn't a one-shot, then I have to delete it and start over again, or I have to do the whole process all over. Once I've made that initial connection, I just refresh it as I'm working. And that's actually what I'm going to be showing today with some of my different examples. So first, what I'm going to start with is I have a Revit model. Now, inside the Revit model, I've got all my content in here. What I'd like to do is I'd like to send this to Unity. And what you're going to notice here is on the top ribbon, I've got a Unity Reflect ribbon. I've got a couple of buttons here, Reflect, Export, and Sync. Now, this model is already connected into the project. Basically, what I would do is I click on Export. I get a little dialog window that asks me where am I putting it, and then I send it to send it. Now, once that's actually done, let me keep that on top now. I've got my model here. Now, what I'm looking at is the exact same model with a little bit of extra stuff in here. I want to show you how I got the mechanical in just a minute. But I've got my model and I'm looking at it in the Reflect app on my iPad. Now, you'll notice here that I have a little sync button. What that sync button is that as I make changes here, I can essentially make sure that it's live. So if I'm trying to explain what I'm thinking about doing to the project, so let's say I'm going to put in another row of columns here. So I copy that out, and what you're going to notice is immediately that circle is now spinning. What it's doing is it's communicating, it's keeping in sync, and I didn't do anything other than make a change in Revit, and I can see those footings showing up inside of Reflect. And that's all because I sent this out to Unity, and I checked the button here to make sure that it was syncing. If I make changes, pull this one out here, I wait a second, it refreshes, that's actually going to move. If I decide that, you know what, I'm not really sure if I want to do this. So select those two, delete it. That thinks, updates, pushes it. I don't have to sync my model to Central. I don't have to then publish that model to the cloud. All I have to do is make sure that this is connected, and then somebody in the field, somebody at the client's office, somebody else in my office, all they need to do is be using the Reflect app on PC, Android, iOS, and they're going to actually see those changes just about live. Think of it like a 10-second tape delay. But that way I can communicate with them. They don't need to have Revit. And if they're using the viewer here, they're not sending it through the Reflect app, they don't even need to pay for anything for a license. With Unity Reflect, the only people that need to actually have that license are the ones who are sending it to the service. This is one of those great things. If I'm working inside of Revit, I can easily take my content, push it into Reflect, and I have that live link if I wanted to. So that way, as I make changes, those changes are reflected, pardon the pun, in real time. So this is how I can work with this within Navisworks. Sorry, within Revit. Now, one thing that you'll notice here is that I also brought in my mechanical. And as kind of per the norm, if I'm bringing something in, most companies aren't adding render materials to their mechanical systems. They usually do like a color override. Kind of like how you can see in here how these are all different colors, but the actual render material of the structure is all sort of that red or orange color, as opposed to, pop that back up, as opposed to like, yellow or purple. Now, if I'm looking at this, and I'm going to switch over to Navis real quick, and I've got my model here, I can see that some things are actually colored, but the majority of all my content here is showing up as just sort of that plain gray default systems material. Now, what I'd like this to do is actually look the same way that we set up inside of Navisworks when we want this to actually make sense to us. So we would typically color code it by the systems. Now, whether this is done manually or you're creating sort of search sets and the object overrides for this, either way. But what I can do now is I can take that view setting that I just did. I'm just going to make sure this is a little bit bigger again. And I'm going to tell it that I want to export this. Now, I have two options within Navisworks. I can't do the live link just because of the way that Navisworks handles the object IDs. But what I can end up doing is saying I want to export the entire document, or I want to export just the things that I select. Now, in this case, it brings me that pop-up that I mentioned earlier. I can see the different projects that I'm a part of. If need be, I can always come in here and remove an existing model. But if it's the same name, I haven't changed the name of the file, it's just going to overwrite and version that for me. So I'm going to say I want to send this out to the cloud and export. I get a little pop-up dialog window that's going to tell me what the current status is. And same idea that we looked at before from Revit. So when I moved the actual footing, copied it, changed it, deleted it, I didn't have to do anything else. It just updated it for me. In this case, same idea. I'm exporting the actual Navis model. Now, the change that I'm doing in this case is not physical. It's more visual. I'm trying to make sure that when I look at this, it makes more sense to me. So that way, when I'm looking at the elements, they're not showing up as all solid white. I'm trying to get a better feel for what things look like, which is the return, which is the exhaust. So that actually will take care of that for me. And you can see it syncing on the top there, and you can see all the colors changing automatically on their own based on the new export. When I start zooming in, so it's still syncing in the background, you can see the majority of them have already changed color for me. And I can see I got a couple of issues I have to fix inside the model now, because not everything is on the same color. But this makes it very easy for me to coordinate and communicate my intent with other people. If I'm trying to make specific colors so that way everybody have a good understanding about what's happening when or where or what things are. This makes it very easy for me to take those views and push them out to the cloud or to my local team, and they actually have an understanding of what we're talking about. Now, this is working with some of my desktop tools. I took Revit, told it to send it, and I can create a live link. I took Navisworks, I told it to send it. While it doesn't make a live link, I have control over what gets sent out. Now, am I exporting out a selection or a document? We showed how easy it is to apply overrides to objects and push that to the cloud so people are seeing what I want them to see. Now, the other options I have are also in the browser. So I mentioned before about BIM 360. Now, working with BIM 360 is pretty easy. So right now I've got my model in the cloud. I can orbit around it, I can view in it. And again, this works with both BIM 360 as well as the unified platform on the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And if I want this to actually work, just like any other plugin, I go to my account admin, and I just have to turn on, there we go, my Unity Reflect plugin. So an account admin needs to enable this. And it's really just going in and checking the box and saying yes. Now from there, what I can do is go to the Reflect service. And I can see the ability to publish files. And it really is as easy as telling it what hub I'm in, what project I'm in, navigating through the folder structure and selecting a file, and choosing which of those 3D views in that file do I want to actually publish in my project. So I'd select that 3D view. In this case, it would just overwrite that one and say export. And once that is set to export, I can then go to my task status and I can track what's going on. So the last time I sent this out, it took 45 seconds. So it gives me a nice little log of what's going on, how long it took, and then I can track that. Now, the great thing about this is similar to what I mentioned about with Navisworks. Those plugins for the desktop applications currently only work with 4 tools. So you got SketchUp, Rhino, Navisworks, and Revit. Now, what if you're using Civil 3D or AutoCAD MEP or Fab MEP or InfraWorks for that matter? If I want to take that data into Reflect, I can by using the BIM 360 connection. So all the different files that both Navisworks and BIM 360 have the ability to view and put together, that allows me to take that and then push that into Unity Reflect. Now, in my case, that's already here, but you notice I don't actually see the architectural model. So what I'm actually doing is I'm controlling what I see inside of the app. Now, overall, working with the app, it's really quite easy. And if you ever get lost, that little question mark in the upper corner, that puts me into sort of a help mode. That allows me to actually tap on any of the other icons, and it gives me an understanding of what that icon actually does, how it helps me navigate and control things. So in this case, I mentioned the architecture file is already there. How do I get it? So I've got my filter dialog window. Now, this does a couple of things. You might see this as just turning things on or off, but it also allows me to filter. Basically, if I click on a specific thing on the name, it'll filter it so I'm focusing on that. But what some people tend not to notice is that there's a pull down at the top. This allows me to go to the document, in which case I can turn on or off the entire file. So if I'm trying to understand specific aspects of the model, I can go here and actually turn off certain models, so I can focus on just specific pieces. Do I want to look at things based on the layer, the manufacturer? Do I have my model set up with phasing? Maybe I want to say only show me certain phases. So there's a good amount of information here, or types of information that I can utilize to help clean things up and make sure I'm able to see the specific information that I want. Now from there, I have a couple of things I can do in the scene. So if I'm trying to make sure that this is a little bit flatter, easier to understand, I can turn off my textures. I can also turn on or off light data, which modifies a little bit of how the light looks. And I can do a sun study. The little dial on the right-hand side allows me to actually slide this back and forth and change where the shadows are. Now from there, I mentioned if I want to get information about this stuff, well, in that case, I just tap on this little icon there. And now I can actually tap on elements inside the model. This now gives me all the information that's inside that object. And similar to what I was looking at before in the object filter, I can say I want to focus on specific parts of the information rather than seeing everything all at once. And then some different tools for navigation. Now, one of the really cool tools in this, and again, this is going to be consistent for both the mobile apps as well as on the desktop, is this little icon in the bottom right. That allows me to choose how I'm actually interacting with my project. It's a little hard to see right now with the model behind it. There we go. But this gives me the ability to choose, depending on desktop or mobile. Am I looking at this in sort of an orbit navigation, like I've been so far, or do I want to go into VR or AR? Now, I'm going to tap on AR for the moment, and I have 3 options. Now, because my office is not exactly that big, and I'm not actually at this site, quarter match and view match would be a little hard for me to show you. But what that allows me to do is actually go out to the field or go to where my project is and actually align the model with the real world. So that way I can actually start moving around and using the accelerometers and other systems of the device. It'll make sure that as I move around, it moves the camera appropriately with that model. Now for right now, though, I'm going to do the tabletop. So this actually shows me where I'm looking. I'm going to tap where I want that to be. And now I can actually see my model superimposed on that. And I have a couple of options to make sure that this is going to be the right scale for understanding it. So I have a little slider here to actually choose what scale I want to work with. So I'll say 1 to 300 for the time being. And say OK. And now there's my model on my computer. I can move around it. I can see it. If I want to just make it a little bit bigger, I can do pinch to zoom. And I can modify it that way. So if you're looking to do something like Tabletop AR, you're at a meeting and I want to actually show the 3D model on top of a drawing or something, this is a really easy way for me to actually set that up without having to do any coding, any craziness. I don't have to print out pieces of paper with QR codes or other symbology on it. I bring the model in, I say I want to look at it in AR, I set up my scale so it looks right, and now I can just move my camera around it, and I'm seeing things how it needs to be seen. And when I'm ready to leave this, tap on the AR again, and tell it that I want to go back to the standard orbit view. And then I have my normal view where I can actually navigate around it, pinch to zoom, drag, orbit. This depends on what I'm trying to do or how I want to interact with my model. So it gives me a lot of options and features with that. Cool. So within the app is set to be relatively simple and user-friendly. We're not trying to go crazy and have 300 buttons around here. Now, if you are looking to have something that's more quote-unquote interactive or has more custom features and branding, that is all actually possible. Good question. What is the advantage of sharing in Unity rather than BIM 360? So in some cases, it could be faster. So if I'm working in Revit and I'm doing, say, BIM Collaborate Pro, and if I want to send my model out to somebody, I'm not worried about sheets. I'm specifically looking to send a model to somebody. This is honestly just much faster than that. So I don't have to sync to Central, I don't have to publish, and I don't have to make sure that that's set up. I just export and sync, and I have a live connection between the two. The other option is within BIM 360, it's not looking to set things up so that way they are very high quality renderings. There's a reason why a lot of people use Enscape locally on their machine. It renders faster and better than Revit. Same thing for using Unity Reflect. There are a lot of overlap between these tools, but each one has their specific strengths. So if I'm looking to make sure that I have multiple parties on my project that have direct access when need be to my model, or at least, rather than syncing it, I send it out and I update it whenever needed, manually. I can do that. I can make sure that teams across the world can open up whatever device they want, and similar to BIM 360. But I know that they're not able to make any changes. It's more for consuming and viewing the model. If I'm doing things where I'm working for like real estate, this is perfect for that. And it's not a one or the other. As I showed before, I could take advantage of putting content on BIM 360, so that way I can pull from it and put it into Unity Reflect. Now, having said that, there are a couple of things to keep in mind with regards to how BIM 360 works with Unity Reflect. So if I hop back over here. Now, when I brought up that architecture model, one of the things that you might have noticed is that it felt a little flat. Part of that is the way things are, again, at the moment, when you're viewing the models in BIM 360 and then pulling it into Unity Reflect, it's not pulling in all the same materials as I would get if I pushed it directly from Revit. So you notice that same exact model, almost the same angle of the view, but on the Revit side, I can actually see some of the textures that are there on the brick, the concrete, and on the grass. And when I pulled that architectural model directly from BIM 360, it lost some of that. So those are things that are being worked on, but it is something to be aware of at the moment. Now, when we look at using Unity Reflect, there's a couple of things that you get. First, of course, is access to Unity Reflect, but you get that authoring plugin. And only the people who are going to be sending to, basically creating the content and putting it in Reflect, actually need that license. And in order to work with this, you do need to have a Unity server, but that could be on your local machine. It could be on your local network. It doesn't have to be in the cloud. So if you're working on projects that are more of a security requirement or you're not allowed to utilize the cloud, you still can use Reflect. And in that case, if I am using my mobile device, like an Android or iOS tablet, it still works. I just have to have access to that network so I can connect to it. Now, in terms of getting up to speed, I went over some of the buttons for the actual app itself, very user-friendly. Setting content into it is also pretty user-friendly. And Unity has their free online getting starting content available for anybody who purchases. Now, I also mentioned that you can take this further by just using, further than using just Unity Reflect. And that's Unity Pro. That's a separate purchase, but it can do some pretty wild things, and I just wanted to make sure I touch on this. Now, with Unity Pro, you'll get Pro. You also have access to Unity Learn Premium, which is just much more robust learning content. And that also allows you access to the application source code so you can customize this a lot more. Now, what that means is that rather than just going from the different native plugins like Revit or Rhino, going right into different viewers, we're able to take that data and then modify it. We can create simulations. So if I want to be able to click in some areas and see what happens for acoustics, if I want to have a customized viewer where, you know what, I kind of like the viewer, but I want to have my company's branding on it, or I want to have a different button or something on it. So you can start to really customize it and make it your own. And as an example of that, Shop Architects has been working with Unity, and they actually have some pretty cool examples of what they've done with this, where while they're actually out in the field, they're able to scan, in this case, a QR code so it knows where you are, and then that brings up the model and aligns it with them. And then from there, they can actually start looking at things, understanding the model, and even clicking on different elements like section lines and bringing in the actual views of them. So like anything else, there's what you can do out of the box, and then there's what you can do once you start really getting into the nitty-gritty. If you want to actually create customizations, if you want to actually create additional aspects or functionality. So those are the things that you can actually get when you start working with the Unity Pro components. Now, I also wanted to mention something called Visual Live. Now, Visual Live is a different program. However, Visual Live was recently purchased by Unity. So this is something that's going to have an integration in the future. Not sure if it's near or not, but it is not something that will have an integration in the future. And this is the great AR, VR mobile tool. So if you're using tablets or the HoloLens, this can actually connect to your models and actually show you a lot of great data in the field. So I just wanted to make sure that people know. So again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them into the questions or the chat. So things we went over today. With Unity Reflect, you don't actually have to leave your application. You don't have to sit there and say export from and then really try to modify things. You're not sending everything into 3D Max first, so that way you can curate it before it goes. Basically, you set up a view in your tool, and then I send the content that I want to Reflect. One click, it goes. I can set up a live link between some of my tools like Revit, and that way, as I make changes live in that model, I'm able to actually see those changes reflected in the actual viewer. And I'm still able to click on the elements and get the actual data from them. Great question. Can you make changes in the field that go back to Revit, like moving the footer examples? Right now, no, not with the actual Reflect out of the box. It's primarily a viewer. So you're not making model changes there and then pushing it back into Revit. Is it possible to add AI bots in Unity to interact with models for training purposes? In Unity Pro, yes. Reflect, no. But with the Pro, yes. Any other questions? Okay. Here's one. What versions of Revit or Navis works does it actually support? So right now it works on versions, on Revit 18 through 21. Rhino works with version 6. SketchUp is 2019 and 2020. And let's see here. I believe Navis is 18 through 21 as well. All right. And we have other great webinars coming up in the future, so still keeping an eye on the questions. Just keep more coming. But our next one coming up is a coffee break with Panzer and Microdesk. So Panzer is a great tool for managing all your data using different cloud tools. So if you have multiple offices or even just one, there's some benefits to that there too. We're going to go over how you can actually manage that clean up your storage footprint, and make life a lot easier from an IT standpoint. The next one after that, on April 20th, is going to be focusing on Autodesk Construction Cloud Connect. So if you've never heard that term before, what that does is it allows you to make customized integrations between different tools without needing to know how to program. So if I'm right now using Procore and BIM 360 and Bluebeam, and I really wish there was just a way to make it connect to each other. If a file goes in here, I want it to automatically show up there. If I make an issue in BIM 360, I want you to create something over there. That's actually how you can do that without needing to know how to program. It's a great tool for that, for breaking down silos and creating integrations. And that's going to be on the 20th. Now, if anybody does have any questions that come up after, good question here. Do you need to be a programmer to customize? Not necessarily, but it does help. So there are some coding examples that you can take advantage of, but one of the things with game engines is that they are very different from the authoring tools that most of us in AEC have familiarity with. So like if you know 3D Max, it helps, but working inside the actual game engine like Unity Pro, being a programmer does expand your ability in it. It's not necessary, but it does make life easier. However, more and more tools, including Unity, are creating the visual programming tools. So if you've ever used Dynamo, similar to that, where I can say, I want to do this, and when this happens, I want it to do that over here. So you can start to string things together without, again, needing to know how to program. What VR system does this work on? Right now, it is the HTC Vive, and I believe the Oculus. I'd have to double check, though. I know things change pretty quick. All righty. If any other questions come up after this, definitely feel free to reach out to us. If there are suggestions or comments, like, hey, I really love it if you did a webinar on this, let us know. We're always looking for more information and feedback. But otherwise, everybody, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. Have a great holiday weekend, and thank you very much. Take care, everybody.